it. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
And good morning. Welcome to a beautiful, sunny Monday morning in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It is October 22nd, the year of your Lord, 2012. And we've got a final presidential debate tonight. Thank God. And in 2 weeks, we have an election. And I went out yesterday to take a long walk to sort of get away from all thoughts of such terrifying things as the potential of Mitt Romney becoming president of the United States and just wanting to enjoy the beautiful day. And on my walk, I bumped into, at various points, 3 different people who I know, and every single one of them immediately engaged me in a conversation with the question, what do you think's going to happen? And so my efforts to get away from it by taking a long walk yesterday were for naught, since it was interrupted more than once by the real world and the obvious concern that some folks have. And, the polls give them some reason. It continues to tighten in some respects. There's some good news out of Ohio today. Quinnipiac poll showing Obama 5 points up in that must-have state of Ohio. Now, you have to be a real wonk to... you have to be like, what's his name, Todd on, blanking on his first name, on MSNBC, who is clearly a guy who understands polling and how it's done and what the numbers mean and looking in between and crunching them, because he often talks about that kind of thing. Chuck Todd just came to me. But I happened to see this today, and it sent chills down my spine. This is from David Frum, who is somebody who is, I think, credible, writing in the Daily Beast, which I find generally credible. And it's hard to argue with this. Now, if you can keep some numbers in your head, well, you don't have to do numbers. We don't have to do numbers. Here's what he says. You want something to worry about? Consider this. He's looking at what could happen in 2 weeks. He said, okay, let's figure how this thing could come down. Let's award Obama the following swing states. Give him Ohio and give him... No, give it... Okay, wait. Here's how he does it. Give Obama Ohio, give Romney Florida. And right now, it sort of looks like that might happen, although Florida is not as much a certainty for Romney as Ohio is for Obama. Then give New Hampshire, which has just a few piddling little electoral votes, but give New Hampshire to Obama. And that's interesting because New Hampshire has swung... No, it isn't. Okay, I obviously have to stop this right now because I'm obviously incapable of doing this. Here's what I'll do. Here's what I'll do. Instead of interjecting my what turn out to be stupid remarks, let me just read this to you because it's just a teeny little thing. But let me read this to you. It's sobering. It tells us that we could experience a frightening kind of, a frightening episode of deja vu. Okay, here's what he does. With the numbers, electoral votes. Award swing states, Ohio to Obama, Florida to Romney. Give New Hampshire to Obama. Give Wisconsin to Obama. Even though Paul Ryan is from there. Give Colorado, Virginia, Iowa, and Nevada to Romney. Now, I'm going to quibble with some of those. But let's just imagine that's what happens. What you get is, guess what, in terms of electoral votes? 269 for Obama, 269 for Romney. You have a tie. And a tie goes to the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives is Republican. Romney wins. Then, just in case that's not horrific enough, now consider this. What if Obama has a lead in the popular vote, even though the electoral vote is tied? This moves us beyond Bush versus Gore territory into someplace even more contested and more frightening. It's possible. It's possible. However, I don't see how you award Colorado, Virginia, Iowa, and Nevada to Romney. My guess is Iowa goes to Obama and Colorado goes to Obama, and I believe Nevada goes to Obama. I don't believe that. So never mind. I didn't mean to upset anybody. I don't buy it. I do not buy it. I want to take some time today to honor George McGovern, who was a gentle man in every essence of that word, or keeping those words as adjective and noun. He was a gentle man. And what a lot of people can't get through their thick skulls is that a gentle man is not a weak man. A gentle man can be an extraordinarily strong man. As I thought of George McGovern over the weekend, and because I had recently reread this amazing story that Tom Juneau had written in Esquire magazine about Fred Rogers, I started to sort of conflate the two in my head. And having known Fred Rogers and having certainly observed George McGovern, I think the two are very much alike in that these were two extraordinarily good-hearted, kind, gentle, and empathetic men who were also, despite that outer sense of gentleness and soft-spokenness, were incredibly strong and fearless and tough. They just didn't show it in the kind of cartoonish, macho manner that so many of us, unfortunately, equate with masculinity. I think both of these men were more highly evolved. They in their character and in their sense of self. They did not see a difficulty in blending strength and power with gentleness and kindness. That was all part and parcel of their makeup. As I read some of the obituaries about George McGovern, I was reminded of all kinds of things. You know, he had that sort of flat, nasal, Midwestern voice that doesn't come across too well. He was not given to blowing his own horn. He was diffident in that respect. He wasn't, to prove the courage part and the masculinity part, for some people who don't get masculinity unless it comes, you know, with fists and muscles or something. He, of course, was a fighter pilot in World War II who flew some extraordinary number of missions. The last one, his plane was hit with enemy fire, killed his navigator. He managed to crash land the plane. He was awarded all the medals you can be awarded, distinguished, I don't know, they call that a Distinguished Flying Cross or whatever. No, maybe that's the Brits, whatever, that kind of a thing. And as so many members of that generation, he came back from the war and never wanted to talk about it. Wouldn't talk about it. It's interesting how the guys who really could have bragged about their combat experience usually didn't. And then the ones whose combat experience was perhaps apocryphal in many ways, like Joe McCarthy's Tail Gunner Joe. That's how he came back from the war and ran. He ran as a war hero when apparently not quite true. So McGovern goes back home and becomes the only history teacher at a little college. And he runs for Congress. He's married to the same woman, Eleanor, for 63 years until her death. He raises 5 children. I believe 5, yes. He later joked about his trouncing to Richard Nixon. He's the one who ran against Richard Nixon after the Watergate burglary, but before the burglary had been followed up to the point where everyone would agree something really bad happened here. If Watergate had, and if the reporting on it had been a little speedier, in all likelihood, George McGovern would have won. He remained somebody who changed the world for the better. He was responsible for all kinds of programs that helped ensure that people would not be hungry. That's not macho stuff. No, that's just stuff that saves lives. He was a wonderful human being. I was friends to his son-in-law, Jim Rowan, who lived in Madison, Wisconsin, when I lived there. And Jim, too, had some ambition to get into politics, and he ran for the mayor of Madison. And Jim had the same sort of makeup problem I had. He had very dark circles under his eyes, which made him look, sick. And I recall a very funny evening where I insisted that he learn how to apply concealer under his eyes and some makeup before he went on on television so he didn't look like a scary Halloween mask. And I've often chuckled at the memory of watching Jim Rowan sticking this stuff. He was so uncomfortable. He was like, oh, God, I don't think this. I said, do it. Do it, please, do it. He and his dark circles did not win. He was married to one of McGovern's daughter. Another daughter also lived in Madison, and this daughter was a troubled soul, an alcoholic, who was found dead one day in a snowbank in Madison, frozen to death. She died of hypothermia, passing out in a snowbank. McGovern later said it was the darkest time in his life, and of course blamed himself. He said, I was so busy, I was not a good father. And to blame himself for his daughter Teresa's death was absurd. She was sick. She had a sickness. One of his sons also. Because of knowing Jim and his wife Susan, I had a sense of the McGovern as a man, and it dovetails totally with everything I have said. Just a good human being. Can you imagine the history of this country if he had been elected as opposed to Nixon? Now, because he was such an unabashed liberal, proud liberal, and because he was trounced by Nixon, pretty much 2-1, 49 states to 1, which is about as humiliating a loss as anybody can endure. He later joked it was a cute joke that was repeated in every obit I read. A year later, he joked about it by saying that I always had wanted to run for the presidency in the worst way, and I did. But it just haunted him, I think. It's not something he ever quite got over. Well, George McGovern, a good man. Let me just quote this to you. He kept writing. I remember reading an op-ed piece he wrote maybe about 6 months ago. He wrote this in his last book, What It Means to Be a Democrat. This came out a year ago, in November. And in the book, he was trying to get Democrats to rally against what he saw as the growing extremism of the Republican Party. And this is a quote from the book. We are the party that believes we can't let the strong kick aside the weak. Our party believes that poor children should be as well educated as those from wealthy families. We believe that everyone should pay their fair share of taxes and that everyone should have access to health care. There has never been a more critical time in our nation's history. We are at a crossroads over how the federal government in Washington and state legislatures and city councils across the land allocate their financial resources. Which fork we take will say a lot about us and our values. Yeah. And another thing worth pointing out is he might have been one of the few people to go to Washington to be a senator, to run for president, and to never, ever make any money off of it. He did not become a wealthy man. He had no interest in staying in Washington and, playing the inside game the trading of influence, lobbying, that kind of thing. He just went back and did what he had been doing before he ever entered public service, and that was writing and teaching and lecturing. A good man, George McGovern. You know, you think about it. Okay, so his big thing was he was trying to get the war stopped, Vietnam War stopped. Here's a guy who knew war. He knew it. And he didn't know it from just up above in an airplane where he was bombing people on the ground and being attacked by other planes in the air. He knew it on the ground as well because he ended up in Italy during the war. He said he can't get out of his head the picture of like just skinny, starving little kids there as a result of war. Of his buddies shot down and killed. He knew war. And yet he was painted, when he ran against Richard Nixon, as somehow the scaredy cat who wasn't tough, who was afraid somehow for America to show its muscle in the world and afraid somehow to protect America. And Richard Nixon, he was deemed the strong one. Yeah. And he was reelected, you know, in a huge, huge, huge deluge. Only, of course, to have to resign before his term was finished. Rest in peace. George McGovern, a good and gentle man. Let's take a break. And when I return, I got so much stuff here to share with you. Some of it's, I think, you will find of interest. So stay tuned.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
In a world where the GOP presidential campaign was mind-numbingly long,
On next election day, you can say no to hope and change and choose a better way.
and the president revealed his true intentions.
If I tax each rich man, oh Solyndra, I could lend you all the cash.
Isn't it nice to know that you can laugh at all of them? Come see the Capitol Steps.
November 4th at the Byam Theater. Tickets on sale at trustarts.org and 412-456-6666.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on tickets to the Science Center, History Museum, Carnegie Museums, and the top Halloween attractions in Pittsburgh. This week, get discounts on the Scare House, Terror Town, and Pittsburgh Opera's Don Giovanni. Bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's e-commerce mall. Bergbargains.com.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Hey, welcome back. Chuck writes, Lynn, not unlike your walk yesterday. On Saturday, my wife and I took a ride up to State College to visit our daughter and to see the fall foliage, clear our heads, get away from the current events and the election robocalls. Although I expected to see plenty of election yard signs, I did not expect to see entire sides of barns painted with anti-Obama slogans. I did not expect to see anti-Obama homemade signs the size of a tractor trailer, hand-painted and erected on the farms of central PA. Many of these slogans were not kind. The talking heads always say that central Pennsylvania votes differently than Pittsburgh and Philly, and now I have my proof of that. You know, I had a similar experience recently driving from Chicago up to Green Bay, which takes me through, very northern part of Illinois into southern Wisconsin, through Milwaukee, and then up the Michigan River, Lake Michigan coast, up through a lot of little towns, Sheboygan, Manitowoc, Little Chute, and a lot of farm land. And I saw the same thing. I did not see one. It's interesting. I didn't see a pro-Romney sign. And I don't see you saying, Chuck doesn't say anything about pro-Romney signs. I didn't see pro-Romney signs. What I saw were, billboards saying things like, save America from Barack Obama. It was all this, the terror, the fear-mongering that if you keep this frightening human being named Barack Obama in the White House for another 4 years, that, the nation is doomed, the world is finished. That kind of emotional, charged lunacy. But it wasn't for Romney. And I saw no pro-Obama signs, not till I got into Green Bay. And then I can't say I saw a lot of them there either. But that's a conservative part of Wisconsin. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's been noted we're not seeing a lot of yard signs in general. But Obama's picking up endorsements from newspapers in red states, which is interesting. I've read a few over the weekend. Here's one from, Mitt Romney's Utah, from the Salt Lake Tribune, which starts its endorsement with, all this wonderful stuff about Romney, how they knew him, how they like him there in Utah, how, they thank him for saving the Olympics there because the Olympics were, as they called it, a cesspool of scandal. And he made it one of the most successful Winter Games on record. And they start out just praising him to the skies. And then they say, this is the Mitt Romney we knew, or thought we knew. Sadly, it's not the only Romney, as his campaign has made abundantly clear. And then they go on to talk about his, quote, servile courtship of the Tea Party in order to win the nomination, and now is the party's shape-shifting nominee. They say that politicians routinely tailor their words to suit an audience. Romney, though, is shameless, lavishing vastly diverse audiences with words, any words they would trade their votes to hear. And then they say, where is that pragmatic, inclusive Romney we saw, who led Utah to Olympic glory? That Romney has skedaddled and is nowhere to be found. And they go on, and then they talk about Obama having done just fine given the plate he was given. And they end it thusly. The president has earned a second term. Romney, in whatever guise, does not deserve a first. That has to be the largest newspaper in Utah. The Mormon state. It's interesting. And I mean, there's no doubt that that's a red state, but so that's probably what's a liberal newspaper? Is that a liberal newspaper? What's it doing in Utah? Isn't that odd? Well, at least I love the fact that it must drive everybody nuts there. Okay, so last night I'm looking around in various places for news to talk about. Did you see this story? I don't believe I saw it in the paper this morning. The little girl who got shot in Freedom. Did you hear about this? At first, I thought this was a joke. This is one of those things where I thought, okay, this is a joke. I mean, for April 1st, you'd say it's a joke. But apparently, it's not a joke. Here it is, Associated Press, because it did make its way into, I did see a little item in, I think, USA Today or the New York Times. Police say a costumed 9-year-old girl was accidentally shot outside her Beaver County home during a Halloween party. The girl was coming up over a hillside wearing a black costume and a black hat with a white tassel. And according to the police chief, a male relative mistook her for a skunk and fired a shotgun at her. He hit her in the shoulder, the arm, the back, and the neck. Oh my God. She was flown to Children's Hospital. Whether or not charges will be filed is not known. I happened to check this out today, and interestingly enough, on the Associated Press site, there were comments being left, and one of the comments is from somebody who says he is the brother of this girl. And he says, "This is my little sister. She's in the ICU. She had surgery last night to remove 5 centimeters of her intestine. Her liver, spleen, and pancreas were also pierced. She has pellets lodged in her spine and shoulder. Her left scapula is broken, and also a couple of broken ribs. She has a tube in her chest to drain fluid from her chest cavity. Her vitals are good considering what she's going through. Please pray for my sister, please." And then there's a lot of other questions, and it's the question I have. Wait a minute. It's dark out. You see what you think is a skunk coming over a hill. Your reaction is to shoot it? What the hell is that? And then other people will say, anyone who thinks they see a skunk the size of a 9-year-old girl is most likely drunk as a skunk. Now, the police are saying that he was not drunk. But this is the kind of thing, people with guns. Oh, yeah, they love their guns. They cling to their guns, and they shoot 9-year-old girls. According to this brother, he also says that the relative was a young man. He's in his 20s. Unbelievable. People and their guns. The guns being the first. If a gun isn't there, you don't go running for the gun because you think you see a skunk. I've seen skunks in my yard. No one's been killed as a result or injured. Hello?
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Hey, I live in Beaver County, and that's a terrible story, but you've ever heard of Brady's Run Park? They have a shooting range there. These guys are down there till 11 o'clock. They must have lights down there. Shooting, you can hear it. I live in Patterson Township, Beaver Falls. Up this area, people from I think Ohio come here, because they're allowed a certain caliber, higher caliber than the other states allow. So it's just a big gun craze up here. I can't stand it. I mean, I don't have nothing problem with hunting and all that, but it's just people are nuts with guns. It's unreal.
I know.
Yep, that's all I have to say.
Well,
have a good day.
Thank you. You too, and keep your head down. I mean, if you're living around there with all these gun nuts who shoot at anything in the dark for whatever reason, jeez, unbelievable. Gigi writes, I live in a very Republican area, so I see a lot of Romney signs. But I see even more vote no signs with a pirated Obama logo. I hope everyone with one of those signs does go vote no, because as far as I know, there is no running. Get a candidate already, she says. No, it's quite clear that a lot of Romney votes are not for Romney. I mean, they just want Obama out. I have a homemade Obama sign in my yard because I have yet to receive the sign I ordered a month ago. That's not good. None of the campaign offices I have visited had signs as of last week. Weird. Enjoy the debate tonight. Well, Gigi, that can only be accomplished if I drink heavily. And I don't think I should, but whatever. I mean, we got a seventh game of the. I mean, I'm into the watching the baseball game. I'll have to be flipping around. I'm even vaguely interested, although, as you know, I no longer now watch football. I'm vaguely interested in Detroit and the Bears. I admit. Whatever. What a world, what a world, what a world. Okay, every time I read stories like this, I go nuts. Because it has never been my luck, I guess, to work for like one of these kinds of employers. An employer that I would say would be enlightened or progressive or get that good morale and caring about, the health and welfare of your employees and not just their exploitation is a good business model. Hang on just a sec. Hello?
Sorry, I
That's
tried
okay.
to get in before you went into your
okay.
next thing.
That's okay.
Hey, it's PJ from Greensburg. I have, so it's going to be foreign policy tonight, correct?
Yep.
Here's what has made me absolutely livid and crazy, and I don't know what the Obama campaign or advisors are doing. You know they're going to go back into Libya tonight, correct? I mean, would you agree with that, or do you think Romney's just going to avoid it because?
Oh no! There's no avoiding Libya. It will definitely come up, and I'm sure Bob Schieffer, who's moderating it, will specifically bring it up.
Well, and I think Romney's chomping at the bit because I think their whole side feels like Candy Crowley did save the president on that issue, whether that's true or not.
Right.
Here's what I don't understand that the Obama people haven't talked about, or maybe they talked about it. Anyway, so that happens in Benghazi. The 4 people are killed. And I didn't hear. I saw stories about this. I heard about it on the news, but I had to look for it, and I don't think it's common knowledge. 30,000 Libyans rallied together and invaded the compound where the
particular militia believed to be behind the attack occurred, and they attacked them.
There was took also their weapons. The compound was taken over by the new Libyan government.
Right.
And, I don't understand why the Obama people don't say, do you want to see what we've done for Libya? Because of the way the policy we had towards Libya, the way we treated those people, this is what they did. When something, when the minority of radicals did what they did, the majority of now free democratic people went and took care of these people.
Right.
What more kudos could you give to the Obama's policy as far as Libya goes? And I don't understand why they haven't touched it. Nobody has said a word about it. I don't understand why I didn't hear more about it on the news to begin with, because you would I guess that doesn't sell as well as, there are more terrorists coming to get us.
Maybe so, but yeah, I mean, it's right. It's a good point, and there was an immediate reaction in Libya of Libyans wanting to show that they were siding with the United States. They were not with these people, and the government doing the same thing. But, it's not a strong government. You do have all of these. What happens in a case where you had the kind of strife to get Gaddafi out, there are so many weapons loose now. It's like everybody who wants a grenade launcher probably has one in their house now. So you've got a lot of armed people, some of them up to no good, and you don't have a strong government to get things under control. All of these places that have thrown off their governments, I mean, look at Egypt, look at Libya, look at any of these places, and look at the horror of Syria now bleeding into Lebanon, and you got a region that is totally destabilized.
Well, but I do think that, and that, I guess that makes my point even more about showing Libya as a shining light of what good can come from it, from something bad happening. I'm just at a loss for why they won't bring it up. So.
Okay. I don't know either. Thank you. Wow. I was wondering, as I was reading Chuck's email about driving up to State College and seeing all this, then reminding myself of what I saw in the rural areas of Wisconsin, I was sort of in my head thinking, what is it with the rural folk in regard to Obama? Because it's really ugly out there. And you can figure that out on your own. However, somebody has just sent me a rural voter poll, and Romney leads Obama in rural voters by 22%. And here's my guess in part, that it does have something to do with fear of this strange black man, because rural people, at least in my state of Wisconsin, they're all white. In central PA, I think that's probably pretty much the case as well. They don't know black people, and what they see and hear of black people scares them. On the news and this hip-hop stuff and all that. I mean, I just got a feeling that he seems alien, just totally alien to them. In fact, urban people in general seem alien, probably, but that's part of my guess. But the rural vote I don't think it's always been a Republican vote. Well, thank God there aren't anywhere near as many rural voters, I don't think, as urban. Wouldn't seem there'd be. And we are not the only state that has this kind of yin-yang, rural, urban. And in Pennsylvania, the urban west and east, Pennsylvania, Philly and Pittsburgh, generally do overwhelm that middle Mississippi rural vote, and it's why it goes to the Democrats, generally speaking. But it's also why the legislature is so full of Republicans, because that's a lot of territory, and then you add the suburbs, which tend to be more Republican. I don't know. This is what democracy gets you. God knows it's messy in Libya, and it's pretty messy here, too. At least we're not killing each other. Yet. So what I was going to say is, I've never really worked for one of these employers who gets it, that, you want to keep your people happy and comfortable. So this was the latest thing. I think I read this in Sunday's Times. There's a company, a software company in San Francisco called Evernote, and they have 250 employees. And get this, every full-time employee, from the receptionist to the top executive have their homes cleaned twice a month free. Jess is looking at me like, what? Yeah. Now, how's that for a perk? Huh? Now, why would they do that? That doesn't, you would say, well, that doesn't have anything to do with what? They clean their houses every 2 weeks for free? Yeah, they do. Stanford, University of Stanford, School of Medicine, is piloting a program to provide doctors with house cleaning and in-home dinner deliveries. Because here's what these employers have figured out. The workplace that we all work in, most of us work in, is the same damn workplace setup that was set up in the 40s and 50s and even the 60s? Right? It is. And that workplace was set up with the assumption that the husband was working and the little woman was at home minding the domestic front. But that's not true anymore, and hasn't been true for a long, long time. And so workers, men and women, leave work, go home, and have all of that stuff still to do. They're stressed out. They're not getting as much rest as they should be. They go back to work. They're stressed out about what's happening or not happening at home. If they have a sick child, they don't know which way to go because there's nowhere to help them. So if these smarter bosses know that if you're coming home at the end of a day and you are exhausted and you have a pile of cleaning to do and you got all this other stuff to do, you're going to get burned out. And burned out employees, burned out doctors, burned out anybody, not good. Not good workers. Happy workers make better employees. The same guy who does the cleaning for every employee he has twice a week. I mean, excuse me, not twice a week, twice a month. Also, and this one creeps me out a bit, he also, every time an employee has a vacation, he gives them $1,000. $1,000 to spend on the vacation. But here's what creeps me out. He insists it has to be a real vacation. He says you can't go visit the in-laws. You have to go somewhere different and let go. Then I'll give you $1,000. Now, what I don't find right about that is, for me, a vacation is visiting family. That's what I want to do. So I wouldn't get the $1,000. I don't like that. So I don't think I'll ever work for a place like that. I know I won't. Jess, you got a shot, but I don't. You know, these Google and Facebook and places like that have a reputation for doing this kind of innovative thing with their workers. And just the tech industry in general has that sense of making people comfortable and reducing stress as much as possible. I mean, at Facebook, they give you a free dinner when you're leaving. At the end, you get to take your dinner home. And it's good. I mean, they employ, good chefs and stuff. Or if you're working late, they have this really nice cafeteria-ish, restaurant-y place where they say your spouse, your children can come and join you, and you can eat with them. And also, I know Facebook pays $3,000 per family in child care expenses. But most of us ain't ever going to have any of that. But if you think about it, it is unbelievably absurd that we have the same business model, the same workplace model in general that we had 50 years ago, when our lives, how we live them, who's in the workplace, has absolutely been turned around. It's changed totally. And yet the workplace has not changed to keep up. So this is a big, huge part of why Americans, more than people in Europe, more than any other place, because we don't get as much vacation, we don't have the support that like a European family or a European worker has. It's why Americans are more stressed out than just about anybody. We're wrecks, and with good reason. If you're a worker in Europe, first of all, you get a lot more paid vacation. You don't work as hard. Your children are assured a good education. You don't have to worry about childcare or daycare. You don't have to worry about maternity leave. You don't have to worry about your, having health insurance. These are the kind of worries that plague the American worker. And so we've got these hardworking Americans all over the place, work. I'm looking at a bunch of big buildings out my window. They're in there, they're working their tails off, and God knows how they're juggling the home and the work realities. Because God knows, in general, their employers don't give a Okay, we got more reports from out in the boonies. Tim writes, I was driving north of Pittsburgh over the weekend, left me wondering about the Obama strategy of selling yard signs. I can count the Obama signs I've seen on my fingers. Makes it seem like everyone supports Romney. I think even the bumper stickers are leaning that way. Yeah, I don't think you should sell yard signs. I think you should give them away. I think you should give as much as you possibly can. Because, obviously, people like a sense of a winner. They're energized by that. Ansel writes, Lynn, Chuck's email about the signs in rural Pennsylvania makes a much broader point. The tone of this election is unlike any I have ever seen. There is an ugliness in this election that would turn off even the most passionate political junkie. Yeah, I'm just wondering if we'll ever be able to go back, if we're now setting, a new standard of ugliness, and that this is how we think politics will now be, just this horrible ugliness. And unfortunately, I really think a lot of it does have to do with, again, I'll go back to it, Obama's race. And also the Republicans fighting ugly like they do. Of course, that's not how they see it, but from my vantage point, that's how I see it. Got to get another break in here, guys. We'll be right back.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
Pittsburgh City Paper's Best of Pittsburgh 2012 is available now. Over 100 pages of the best restaurants, clubs, bands, bars, and everything else that makes the Burgh the city of champions. Pittsburgh City Paper Best of Pittsburgh 2012, available at over 1,700 locations throughout western Pennsylvania, and on the web at pghcitypaper.com, and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
I didn't know about chronic obstructive pulmonary disease until I took the wheel and lent my support to Drive for COPD. Help Americans take action against this leading cause of death by logging on to driveforcopd.org to learn more. I'm Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson, and I drive for COPD.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
Okie doke. Speaking, I forgot to put this in. Speaking of places to work and who you work for, making a difference in your life in very real ways. There's a lawsuit by an employee of the CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch. The employee is a pilot who is one of the pilots who flew his fancy private jet. And this lawsuit has sort of opened up a window on this particular boss, this CEO. His name is Michael Jeffries. And what a jerk this guy is. Wow. First of all, he, I don't know how you don't get this guy on sex discrimination. He staffs his jets and pretty much every place else he can with gorgeous young men who all have to, to the letter, he tells them what they wear, how they wear it, even to the point where they are mandated to be wearing a spritz of his cologne. Employees working on his Gulfstream jet must greet him and his guests wearing an Abercrombie polo shirt, jeans, flip-flops, boxer briefs. Can you imagine? What does he care what they got on underwear? Boxer briefs and a spritz of the company's cologne. He is to be provided magazines. God forbid an insert, a card or something falls out of one of the magazines. Any magazine he is given must have all of those inserts removed. And if he requests something, the response he wants is not yes, sir. The response he demands is the same always. It's a 2-word response. Guess what it is? No problem. No matter what he says, he wants to hear no problem. This is all in a manual that everybody has to memorize. It even goes into where his dogs will sit. Here's something from the manual. When Ruby and Trouble accompany me, Ruby will sit opposite Michael, that's the CEO, in the cabin. Poor Trouble, I don't know where Trouble ends up, but Ruby gets to sit opposite. There are even instructions on how to vacuum the jet. Here's a quote. From the front of the aircraft to the back, pulling the vacuum toward you to make smooth, even lines. The beds on the plane are to be made in a certain manner, and make sure that you iron the exposed top sheets. He is always to be given, and all guests are, a bowl of pretzels, 1 bowl of pretzels and 1 bowl of squirrel nuts. Employees are to look for fingerprints on the cabinet doors of the lavatory. Make sure that the bar of Joe Malone soap on the vanity does not, or did not, slide out of place during liftoff. They are to ensure that there are 8 tri-folded washcloths in the lavatory, and the toilet paper is not to be visible, and the end square must be folded. God almighty. Okay, finally, I want this. I don't like this guy usually. He drives me crazy. Joe Queenan. But he's got a book coming out called One for the Books, and he loves books, and he says books saved his life. He's just, he loves, and I'm like him. And I just want to read this thing that he says about books, because this is it for me as well. Books as physical objects matter to me because they evoke the past. A subway ticket falls out of a book I bought 40 years ago, and I'm transported back to the Rue Saint-Jacques on September 12th, 1972, where I'm waiting for someone named Annie Lacombe. A telephone message from a friend who died too young falls out of a book, and I find myself again back with him. None of this kind of thing will ever happen with a Kindle. People who need to possess the physical copy of a book, not merely an electronic version, believe that the objects, the books themselves, are sacred. Some people may find this attitude baffling, arguing that books are merely objects that take up space. This is true. But so are Prague, and your kids, and the Sistine Chapel. The world is changing, but I am not changing with it. There is no e-reader or Kindle in my future. My philosophy is simple. Certain things are perfect the way they are. The sky, the Pacific Ocean, procreation, and the Goldberg variations all fit this bill, and so do books. Books are sublimely visceral, emotionally evocative objects that constitute a perfect delivery system. Electronic books are ideal for people who value the information contained in them, or who have vision problems, or who have clutter issues, or who don't want other people seeing what they're reading. But electronic books are useless for people engaged in an intense, lifelong love affair with books. Books that we can touch, books that we can smell, books that we can depend on, books that make us believe for however short a time that we will all live happily ever after. There. Okay, that'd be it for today. Tomorrow, my sister Susan will be joining us. Wednesday, that'd be Chris Potter. Thursday, Tom Sokolowski. And Friday, I don't know. So that's what's on the agenda. Tonight, of course, you have the assignment to watch the debate. We'll talk about it tomorrow. No, that's okay.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.